Hi, my name is Amy Quinn, and this is my Literacy Inquiry Plan of Instruction. The question that I chose to investigate was, is there a benefit to teaching phonological awareness early in schooling to all students, in addition to phonics and whole language instruction? Famous journalist, critic, and women's rights advocate Margaret Fuller once said, "Today a reader, tomorrow a leader." This speaks to the importance that the ability to read plays in our society and how much we can learn and grow through our ability to read about our surroundings. Phonemic awareness is defined as the ability to hear, identify, and work with individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words. Phonemic awareness and phonics are often confused. Phonemic awareness is the ability to hear the difference in sounds and identify those differences. It does not involve the use of print. Phonics takes things further and involves the use of the printed word. These graphics are how I remember the difference. Phonemic awareness only involves the use of our ears. Phonics instruction involves the use of our eyes and our ears. The inventor of the Reading Recovery Intervention Program, Marie Clay, is credited with saying that phonemic awareness is necessary for success in learning to read and write. This plan of instruction was developed for use with kindergarten students. Although I teach 8th grade, it is in a large urban district where many of my students are reading on the 2nd and 3rd grade level. I also teach a self-contained special education class, and some of the students in there are identified as cognitively delayed. There are 2 students in this class that read at a 1st grade level. Since I teach a content area and only have 45 minutes of instructional time a day with my students, it was seemingly impossible to fit in reading instruction and remain on my pacing guide for science. Therefore, I decided to focus on the kindergarten age, since I have a son at home at that level. He was identified by his teacher early this year as needing more instruction in phonemic awareness. He will also be tested for speech articulation issue shortly that might be the root cause of his issues. He has friends in the neighborhood that he plays with regularly that are also his age. Therefore, I knew I could get a small group of them together easily enough to work through a lesson. Unfortunately, we've had so much snow lately that I was only able to do this lesson with 2 of them. My son and the next door neighbor, also known as the girl he is going to marry one day. All of the accompanying pictures were taken later using only my son, since I was not comfortable using images of another person's child in here. Luckily, my son volunteered to do some extra work. The purpose of this activity was to see if students can differentiate the beginning sounds of words. They will also be assessed on their ability to pronounce these beginning sounds correctly. Finally, students will be asked to analyze the words in order to locate another word with the same beginning sound to complete a silly sentence. The objective is that students will be able to isolate and pronounce the initial sound of a word. This is a Common Core objective for both kindergarten and 1st grade. To begin the lesson, students will be given a sheet with silly sentence starters on them. These sentences will contain a lot of alliteration. For example, Allie Alligator ate N, Ben the Bear has a bouncy, We will look at the first sheet together. Each child will have their own copy to follow along. They will not be asked to read the sheets. I will read it to them. They are just asked to listen. On the left side of this picture, you will see 2 of the actual sheets, so you can get an idea of what they look like. After the sentence was read to them, they were asked to repeat the sound that is repeated often in the sentence. Once they were able to repeat the sound, they were given sheets of paper that contained pictures in small squares. They were asked to identify an item that began with that same sound. The page on the right is one of the 2 pages they were given that had the pictures. It was from these pictures that they were asked to choose the same letter sound. For instance, if you look at the sentence starter on the top left, it says, "Digging in the dirt was a dirty." There is a picture of a dog found on the paper to the right. Students will hopefully identify the picture of the dog as starting with the same sound as many of the words in the beginning of the sentence. Here is a photo of my son looking through the words, trying to identify the same sound in the pictures. This is his "I'm proud of myself" face. He had just identified the picture that made the same sound to complete the sentence. When students are able to identify the proper sound, they are asked to cut out the picture and glue it to the square on their sheets. One option would be to allow students to cut and glue the word in the space next to the picture. But I chose to have my son write the word in the space, since we are also working on his fine motor skills. However, if we were to work solely on phonemic instruction, we would simply have the students cut and paste the correct word onto the paper. Here is a display of one of his finished assignments. The students seem to have a good time doing this activity, laughing, and having a good time with the silly sentence. And although they seem to have an easy time doing the sentence we completed, I do believe that at some point the lessons will become a bit more difficult for them. The lessons begin with the initial sound of the words, as you have seen in the previous pictures, but they move on to the ending sound of words, and then consonant, vowel, consonant sounds, and finally conclude with some blending sounds. The article that I read focused on adding phonemic awareness lessons into a curriculum that already had whole language and phonics instruction built into it. In this study, the authors identified classrooms where they added in a component of phonemic awareness. They also studied classrooms where they did not add this component in as their control classroom. According to the findings of the authors, the phonemic instruction increased the reading ability of the students in the group when compared to their peers who were not given the same instruction. The increased reading level was also found to carry through into the next grade level. The question that I have was that will this phonemic awareness instruction help improve the students' reading throughout their academic careers? I'm really curious to know whether these lessons will help improve their reading throughout their careers. And I wish that the research article had followed the students farther than 1 year. I do realize for the sake of time, if you want the article published, you must do so quickly. However, I had hoped to see mention of the authors saying that they would follow these students further and publish a later study that would give those conclusions. In the future, I do think it would be worthwhile for somebody to continue this research and to follow the students farther along to see whether the academic advantages were still found when they were in middle school, in high school, or perhaps even in college. I am definitely going to be continuing these lessons with my son and any of his friends who happen to be around at the time. I will be curious to see if it shows any long-term effects on his reading ability. However, since this is not a controlled study, there will be no clear way to identify this.